I'd like to thank Kind, which is one of our sponsors, as well as TriNet and CFR, and we have some other really amazing sponsors. We have their logos at the door, as well as you can check out the website. Let us know if you have any questions or any resources that you need here in Central Florida to help you with what you're working on, because quite a few of them we have as our sponsors. So Kind Bar wants to make sure that you're doing some healthy things as well as the other companies. Today, I'm excited to introduce Laura Gallaher. She has worked in the fields of development and selection since 2005. She studied industrial organizational psychology and completed her PhD at the University of Central Florida. Laura has experience building teams from the ground up and has led teams of organizational development consultants, researchers, and human resource professionals. Much of her career has been spent with NASA Kennedy Space Center, and she specializes in helping information technology leaders with their leadership development and their selection needs. So please join me in welcoming Laura.
So I wanted to sit. Is that going to be okay, everybody? So there's a handout that everybody has. Hopefully, anybody missing it? Okay. So this is really intended to be kind of a working session. So for some of you tonight, you're going to have a chance to talk with some potential mentors. This is really to kind of get you in the right mind frame for that. For other people, hopefully this would just be something to get you thinking about a mentoring relationship for yourself, what you might be looking for, and how to really make it as meaningful as possible. So I actually want to start out, well, I'll give you like high level. So I think I'm pretty confident that everybody here has had some kind of mentoring relationship. And I want to actually start off by reflecting on that. So there's not a ton of space on the handout, but use the handout, or if you'd rather type or use a tablet or whatever. If you could take a couple minutes and think about a mentoring relationship or experience that you've had. If you can, think about a mentor that you have had. So I'm sure you've also mentored people. Think about somebody that had an effect on your life up to this point. And I would encourage you to really keep a very broad perspective on what that means. So it could be somebody who was an athletic coach, it could be a teacher, it could be a family friend. It doesn't have to be something that was labeled with the term mentoring. It doesn't have to be a formal arrangement. So if you think about a relationship like that that had a pretty strong effect on you, just take a couple minutes and reflect on that. So if you're still reflecting and capturing thoughts, that's great. I'm wondering if a few people will be willing to share an example and any of the answers to the first three questions. Jonathan.
The best mentoring experience I had was with Gordon Parks, who was a prolific photographer, author, became the first African-American director in Hollywood, the film Shaft series. And he provided me with the credibility and the introductions and the financial access and ability that allowed me to lead a team that raised the first $1 million ever raised by African-Americans on Wall Street in history. And what made it so great was that he actually leveraged his personal relationships with some people that he didn't know, to some very, very young men with no experience in the industry. And he gave us that leverage and access. And I most appreciated the fact that his personal sacrifice that he made in the face of him at that time directing the first film ever directed by an African American in Hollywood, which was the Shaft series, that at that time, in 1970, essentially saved the film industry from financial peril.
Wow, that's powerful. So, sounds like this was a mentor who was definitely a champion and a supporter for you, and was able to create networks, made personal sacrifice. Excellent. Thank you for sharing.
And with no pay.
Yeah. Excellent. Who else? Yeah.
My first law teacher at Boone High School, which is about 4 blocks away from here. Her name was Cindy Schmidt. She was a former public defender who came and taught us. She basically gave me the passion and drive to wake up every day and love myself, which was really difficult to do when you're in 9th grade. She cared. She made it great because she cared, she loved, she cried with me. She never judged. She always called me out on my stuff when I needed it, and she always left me feeling better about myself. And I most appreciated her candor, her humor, her willingness to listen, but most of all, her passion about it.
Excellent. So the biggest thing that I heard there was that it was really clear she cared about you as a person, right? She had that openness to experiencing life with you and non-judgmentalism. A couple more?
So mine was someone named Rob Mason. I interned at Disney some before my senior year of college, and I fought my way into getting an internship in kind of a silo in a very narrow part of the engineering department. But Rob kind of took me under his wing and introduced me around and took me from what was a very narrow, very focused internship and kind of introduced me to different areas of the organization where I could meet different people and learn different things. And he realized that not only was I enthusiastic about where I was so excited about where I was for the summer, he helped support that enthusiasm by showing me around and realized that it was just a very short period of time that I was there to make sure that it was really the best experience possible.
Okay. So you took a lot of extra time to make that short experience meaningful and give you some breadth, even though formally the position was more narrow. Maybe one more?
This one seems kind of obvious, but my parents, they've always really encouraged me to do whatever I put my mind to. Anytime I've always been the kind of person who just one day I'm into one thing and the next day I'm suddenly inspired by something else. And my dad would always just ask me whenever I get into something, he says, okay, well, what's next? Where do you want to take this? Where will this lead to? And they kind of taught me what questions I need to ask myself when I'm getting into something new, and how to encourage myself to kind of keep driving toward what I want.
Excellent. So really asking powerful questions.
Absolutely.
Helping you figure out your own answers. Awesome. Okay. Thanks for sharing. Is anybody else dying to share?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, two men in Kona, Hawaii, where I spent a year of my life, formative years. One was Bob Golson. He was a businessman, electrical contractor, sold everything back in Pebble Beach in California, moved out to Hawaii to save his health. But he ended up taking me under his wing. I was literally his apprentice. And he inspired my wanderlust for wanting to travel the world, and that was important. And then the other person was Sherman Cannon. He lived in Kona in a little more than a grass shack, but it was just all you needed there because it's idyllic. But he trusted. He picked me up hitchhiking on the other side of the Big Island and told me where his key was, where the food was. He probably would have given me the combination to his safe probably if I needed money. But he taught me trust.
It sounds like it. Really
So,
demonstrates.
wanderlust and trust.
Excellent. Thank you, George. So, I'm sure that you all have experiences like this that are, pretty powerful for you. What we know about mentoring is that the best mentoring relationships are fairly organic. They just sort of come to be. And so one of the challenges that often faces companies or programs like this is we know that it's a short period of time, we know that it's structured, and we're looking to create that opportunity to provide you with mentors. So what's beautiful about this process is there's a lot about these natural, organic, or informal mentoring relationships that we can really try to replicate through this kind of experience. And the things that we know from the research around mentoring is that there's really 4 factors that kind of matter the most in terms of making that mentoring relationship really meaningful for you. So one is mutual selection, and that's definitely something that you'll have here. This idea that this mentor is somebody that you want to work with, and they've also indicated that they want to work with you, right? There's something that kind of draws the 2 or 3 of you. I know somebody's coming from more than one person. That draws you to each other, whether it's I see similarities, right? Like I see myself in you, or even if it's, you know what, you're totally different and you help me to think about things differently, but some kind of natural magnetism that can exist. Liking seems a little bit obvious, perhaps, but have you ever had somebody try to be a mentor to you that maybe you didn't like so much? Anybody have an experience ever? How did that work? Not so much? Not so much? So a couple people are kind of laughing, so I think a few of you can relate to that. So similarity, so let me ask you guys, what do you think that really means, similarity?
Share some similar interests or same path of work.
Personality.
Personality, interests,
Core values.
core values. What was that?
Relatability.
Relatability, what do you mean by that?
Like, I feel like if you're similar with somebody, you can relate to them. You just innately understand what they're going
Okay. Okay. So like similar experiences and,
through.
okay.
Ethics.
Ethics, which probably ties into core values. So all of that's definitely true. So here's something else that's sort of interesting from the research standpoint. I'm just going to point this out, and I'm not going to tell you what to do with it, it's just information. But there's actually a lot of research that suggests that even similarity on demographic factors makes a big difference. So the extent to which, even from a visual perspective, you feel like you can identify with somebody, people tend to be more satisfied with their mentoring relationships when they have similar demographics, including age, race, gender, all of that. So what I usually tell people when I talk about mentoring is, even though there is research to suggest that's more powerful, I would ask you to think about what's going to be really right or best for you. Right? If you choose somebody who's pretty different from you on some of those more demographic factors, what opportunities will that create for you? What challenges will that create for you? And how will that ultimately help you? So I want to point that out because nobody mentioned demographics. Everything else that you said is right on. So personality and interests, career path, relatability, core values, absolutely. And then trust. So George is a great example of trust. Sounds like that person just put all their trust in you, and I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And trust is everything. At the end of the day. You have all the contracts in the world. And trust the person they're doing business with.
Yeah. So sometimes what happens with trust too, something to keep in mind is you can really break trust down into a couple components. One is going to be trust in somebody's competence. You know, do I trust that what they're saying is actually accurate? Do I buy it? Do I believe it? And then the other piece is, do I have trust in their character? Do I believe that they have my best interest at heart? And those are 2 different things. They really are. You can have trust on the one level and not the other. So sometimes that's where people feel like some incongruity. Like, I don't know about this relationship, something's not quite right. Like, I know that they have my best interest. So that's going to be critical for everything that you try to receive from a mentoring relationship. Okay. So this next question, what do I want? Pretty simple question, not necessarily easy to answer. But I'd like you to take a few minutes to think about that. There's 3 questions there, so if you're using my handout, take a couple minutes and make some notes. So as you're thinking about the answers to these questions, think about the other mentoring relationships that you've had that have been really meaningful and what's the same for you now, the things that you're still going to want like you had in those relationships, and also what's different for you now. And as you heard other people talk about their experiences and what was really meaningful or powerful for them. Did anything resonate with you for what's important to you? So I won't ask anybody to share that piece yet, because what I want you to do now is to really think about this concept of self-presentation. So when you think about having a conversation with somebody who's a potential mentor for you, the way that you present yourself matters, right, for some obvious reasons. So what I want you to keep in mind is really trying to strike that balance between letting them know this is what I need, and this is a weakness of mine, this is something that I'm struggling with, and also letting them see all that amazing potential that you have. When I listen to you talk about some of the meaningful mentoring experiences that you had, and what these people did for you, and the sacrifices that they made, questions they asked, and the trust that they demonstrated, they did those things because they saw something amazing in you. They wouldn't have done that if they didn't see something really, really special. So you want that to be there, and you want them to feel like, I understand how I can really help you. If you're already a total rock star and you have no weak areas, well, first of all, you do, you think that. But if you tell them that you don't, and they think, okay, well, I don't know if I can really help, they're not going to feel so motivated to put their time into it. Most mentors genuinely do mentor because they have an intrinsic motivation and interest in watching somebody else develop and grow. And they do that because they think that you're pretty special. So with that in mind, take a few more minutes now and think about answers to these questions. So how do you want these potential mentors to see you? And if you were being really authentic, what would you let them know? Try to identify what are like 2 or 3 key messages you want them to be very clear about after you talk. willing to share. I'm wondering if anybody is struggling at all with, like, what would be the key message, or how do I frame this? How do I strike the balance? Is anybody struggling with that?
When I wrote down, I'm way in over my head. Sometimes I feel like that all the time. That's a message I'd like my mentor to know.
Okay. Is there anything about that that makes you uneasy to share?
That I'm over my head, that's definitely uneasy. And it's not always easy to admit that to people. Especially when you're dealing with mentors, there's always that hidden background. Well, is this person an investor, or is there a financial stake involved? And that's always looming in the back of the conversation. You never want to express your frailties or your doubts and stuff. But I think a good mentor ought to know those kind of things. A good mentor ought to be willing to listen and say, I understand you're way over your head, and here's how I can help.
Does anybody relate to that concept? So on the one hand, there's that fear. If I share this weakness or this frailty, I show that I'm not completely strong in everything that I'm doing, will I lose out on opportunities in the future?
This is an observation I can context of this. Recently, I'm a mentor type, but working with someone, and they told me some things that I just know from my just technical side, not true, not transparent, not trustworthy. And the guy actually, and this is a guy that's in his 40s, he actually thought he was fooling me. And I looked around to his management team, and I said, this is not true. I know it's not true. You can't fool me. You may be able to fool others, not for long. The good folks, they're not fooled. So, the transparency and let others speak up. Don't try to fool them. They won't, and you just lose. I wouldn't like this.
Thank you for sharing.
I'll share a little bit, because I walk a fine line because I do not come from the business world. My background, teacher, students, for 17 years, and yet now I'm here trying to weather this whole startup, and sometimes I'm a bit hesitant to share that I have no business background. For this interview process, I was asked by George, have you ever managed a team? Nope. So, sometimes I'm hesitant to share those things simply because I'm afraid it reflects poorly on my abilities. I don't think it does. I think truthfully it has nothing to do with whether I potentially could maybe manage a team, but instilling that belief in the person to have that belief in me, it might be a difference.
It's a relatable fear, right? So can you guys think of an experience where there was somebody that maybe you didn't know that well, or you thought you knew pretty well, somebody that you really respected, and then they shared some kind of a weakness or a story about a failure or something, and what did that do for you?
We actually had our founders talk last week, hearing Brett talk about his failures and being so candid with his experiences. It made him relatable, and it inspired me and allowed me to believe in myself that even though I may not know what I'm doing right now, I can learn. So that was helpful.
Do you think he's less cool now?
No,
Do you want me to ask him?
I think he's a rock star. He really did. It inspired me.
Excellent, thanks for sharing that. Anybody else have experiences like that? Where somebody reveals something that's potentially a weakness, or even if they don't think it's a weakness, others might? And what effect it had on you?
It would definitely make you kind of want to help them a little bit more, If they do have a problem, this is something you can help them. It makes you very much want to go and help them in that area if you have that ability. It makes them almost human, and you can instantly, feel more related to them as a human, with mistakes and with problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. So one of the things that's kind of fundamental about us as people and the way that we relate to others is we all have a certain level of a need to be liked. It's different for different people. And the way that that tends to manifest behaviorally is when people are open with you. So the extent to which somebody is open with you, that's a way that you feel like, you know what? They like me. They wouldn't be open with me if they didn't like me. And if you recall, liking is one of the biggest predictors of what makes a mentor relationship very successful. So hopefully you're talking yourselves into being authentic and being real, being open about what you're struggling with, what your challenges are, any weaknesses that you think you have, and sharing that with these potential mentors and with the mentors that you do end up sort of selecting and forming that relationship with. It's going to make the whole thing so much more powerful. So when it comes to actually selecting, identifying who these people, you've met them, I'm sure that you're going to feel a connection with some of them more than others. So I would focus on these things, right? Where are you similar and where are you different? What strengths do they have and do those align with your development areas? And are their strengths also things that are strengths of yours? It's really common for people to want to say, okay, I've got these strengths, that's fine, let's set those aside. I just want to focus on all my weak areas, I just want to focus on the things I'm not good at. And I would discourage you from doing that. I would say, really own your strengths, capitalize on them, continue to build them. So, as much as it's nice to have that sort of complementarity between their strengths and the development area, also look for, they have a strength even stronger than stuff I'm already pretty good at. And I can continue to build on that. And then Bess mentioned core values, which I'm a big believer in. So values alignment. And the second page has potential questions, and these are by no means comprehensive. But these are questions that you could ask of somebody that you're thinking, maybe this person could be a mentor for me. And it's a way to really sort of drive at some of these things. So hopefully you have a chance to ask questions of them, even if it's not in one single moment, down the road. You can ask these questions and then start to learn more about them. Anybody have any other really great, powerful questions or questions that they've used before that they think would be helpful, that they want to suggest to the group?
Have you mentored anyone before?
Okay. Have you done this before?
Yeah.
Do you know what you're doing? Yeah, absolutely.
What was the result?
Yeah, ask them to expand on what their mentor relationship experience has been.
I have kind of a question on this overall process.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out who's auditioning to, because it almost seems like in this situation, and I don't understand who the mentors are or what the understanding or the expectations are, but that question of who's interviewing who.
So I kind of think it's like speed dating.
Yeah, in our case, it's both.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it should be a two-way street. I think even in job interviews and even in interviews for, this program, it should always be a two-way street. Sometimes it feels like one person has more power in terms of that decision making, but that mutual selection is going to be pretty critical. Greg, do you want to say anything else about that in terms of the process specifically? Or? Does that help though?
Dating knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as they're looking for love.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually ran the mentoring program when I worked for NASA Kennedy Space Center, and I used the dating analogy all the time, which got a little bit awkward when I ran the session on flash mentoring, which was the notion of just sit down with that person for 10 minutes and learn something. That was sort of awkward to bring into the meeting. Draw that comparison in front of senior leadership.
What would you say as far as like, because I feel like there's different mentors for different things that the starters and other people will be working on.
And how exclusive should the dating or mentoring relationship be? Like, could you have multiple mentors for different things, would you advise, or?
That's
Yeah.
the dating analogy for right
Then,
now.
Should I sleep around?
That's right.
So, I personally consider myself to be a little bit of a mentor collector. I have a lot of mentors, I really do, and some of them are people that I probably only talk to maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and others I talk to 2 or 3 times a month. I'm a big believer in learning from people who have experiences that I want or different experiences from me. So I'm a fan of dating around, I guess, if we use that metaphor. What I would say, and you know, it could be a little bit different, and I'll just say this. When you have that kind of relationship with somebody, and it really does, you know, it's about that connection, and you've got that really, really strong trust, and probably the types of mentoring relationships that you all thought of at the very beginning when I asked you to reflect on that. There's a level of openness and sharing that happens there that I think what's important is just to understand that trust and that confidentiality, right? So, for example, when I would run the program with NASA, I tried to make it clear to people that it's good to let your mentors know if there's other people who are also mentoring you, right? So you can kind of...
Taking it to the extreme, I think.
And it depends on the context in the program. So like all the mentors that I collected, it's not like they all know about each other, but just this idea that, you know, sometimes a mentor is going to share things with you that they wouldn't share with just anybody. And so just as long as you guys kind of understand what that relationship is, I'm a fan of having multiple mentors and people who can help you with different things.
What techniques do you use to manage mentors, because it can be wasters?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Are we ready to kind of move on to that?
I'm sorry, did I come in?
Just a little bit, but it's good. It's a great segue.
Actually, before we move forward,
Yeah.
in a construct like we are now, where it's a 90-day program, and yes, we want kind of want mentors for the long term, but there's obviously a lot of these things in the next 90 days. What role do connections and connections of connections have in choosing mentors?
What do you guys think?
I mean, to me, it would almost seem like it's pinnacle. It's almost more like, what can you do for me, as opposed to, are you there for my emotional, spiritual, and business support? I think it's a different thing than thinking in long term versus short term.
I mean, in general, I totally agree, right? Short term versus long term. And I think that's going to honestly come back to what do you need, right? What's going to be really important to you right now?
So that's really good point. It's definitely both. Right? If you're looking for mentors that can help support you in your weaknesses, but then also ones that can help you build connections with other people. And so what that also means, though, is you have to not discount people that might not be able to help your weaknesses specifically, because they might be able to connect you with other people, even if they can't help you with your weaknesses.
And that's that, you know who you know, but you don't know who they know.
Right. We used a technique that was, I don't know if mentoring was the term in vogue, but we would set up a board of advisors and in different categories and different disciplines. And so, you know, whenever we had an issue or a question from any one of those given areas, we only asked that they be available to us to the extent that was at their comfort level and convenience. And found that exceptionally helpful, because always somebody could be a link to a leader, connect us with someone. They don't have the answer, they knew somebody who we wanted to get to someone, they could leverage us to another relationship. It was a whole set of people. So I guess they were mentors, but that wasn't the term.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. So this is also not a comprehensive list, right? But these are the types of things that somebody in a mentoring role can do for you. So some of that is going to be that championing, which to me is really about connecting, right? Saying, you know what, I believe in this person, I believe in this company, I believe what they're doing, let me hook you up with people who can make things happen for you. That championing and supporting, that's the biggest thing I thought of when I heard your story. And sometimes it could be more of that, like, well, maybe I do need some emotional support right now because this is sort of challenging, and that could be a completely different mentor. Or it could be the same, and that would be kind of awesome. But the likelihood that you're going to find everything that you need in just one person, from this mentor relationship perspective, is probably pretty slim. So I'm a fan of trying to connect with different people who are going to give you what you're needing for that moment in time. So yeah, somebody that you work with for 3 months, maybe it's not going to be somebody that's like a lifelong connection. So I would take
We always had a real challenge with the WIIFM. What's in it for me? I mean, we always try to position so that it was something in it for them to make themselves available and to do this. Otherwise, what's their motivation to spend their time? What are they going to get out of this? Why? Because usually, professionals, their time is very valuable. We're kind of asking them to extend themselves to and invest themselves in you. We always try to figure out a way to give them something in return, figure out what they like, what they need, what they respond to, and try to push those buttons.
So what do you guys think? What's in it for the people who are going to mentor you?
Do you want the cynical answer or the real answer?
Sure.
The answer both.
Well, the cynical answer is cold hard cash, right? Like if they think your business is something worth investing in and has potential and is scalable, they're going to be wanting to mentor you so they can get a financial return. But I don't know if that's what I want, if that's the initial impetus for the relationship. I'd like that to be a secondary concern, but then again, you're in a business world and that is definitely a concern. So I guess finding that fine line of motivation between cash and all the other stuff that you can get from a mentor that they could get from you. I guess finding that balance.
Other thoughts?
If anyone knows how to do that, please tell me.
It definitely seems like a tricky balance, because if you're talking to somebody and you feel like they're going to mentor you, and they look at you and you look at them, and all you see are dollar signs in their eyes, and they're like, I see you as a cash cow. You're not going to want to trust them or be authentic with them. You're going to want to only present. You're not going to want to present your weaknesses. You're only going to want to present your strengths. You're only going to want to say, I'm very smart. I can do everything, and I can do more with your help. Instead of saying, I have some shortcomings that I'm, because you're going to be afraid that any weaknesses, they're going to be like, you're not as lucrative as I thought you were. I'm leaving you, because it's not like it doesn't seem like a very solid relationship, and that goes back to both relatability and trust. And I think it's very important to have that. And if somebody looks at me and just sees dollar signs, then I don't trust them. So I think it's tougher for somebody who's busy and professional and established and who has all these things to take time out of their schedule to really just intrinsically care about another person and help them just to help them and be good. That's the best kind, I think. So, I mean, striking that balance is definitely, you want to get back to them, but it's a tough one.
It's so silly to think that we're in it for what we can get from it. I'm telling you the truth. It really is. That's a silly thing. It's something you hear, but it's and if you find that, then just move on. But don't think that he or we or the ones that we have are here to get something out of it. Boy, if I wanted to do that, I have plenty of other ways I can find those opportunities. That's just fun.
And even with the black hat on, right? Even your worst case mentor was in it just for himself. You pass his test, yeah, it's a good sign. And again, you can always say no.
It seems like it's with as long as you rely on together. It seems like it's relatively easy to kind of discern where somebody falls on that spectrum, where they just see your dollar signs, where they really want to help you. And I don't know, I think it helps me as a relationship. It's not, I don't feel like that about anybody so far that I've met, I definitely feel like everybody that I've met in this summer has been very like communicative, sort of very nice.
Well, so I'll just share too from my experience. When I've had somebody who approaches me and explicitly asks me if I would be their mentor, that's incredibly flattering. It's incredibly flattering, and just for the sake of wanting to feel good about myself, wanting to feel like I'm competent, like I'm somebody that they trust. There's something that's very intrinsically rewarding about even being asked that question. And then when you're able to provide help and insight to somebody, and you see them learn and grow. And what's neat, one of the things I really loved that we did at the Space Center was mentoring awards that came from the protégés. And it was my favorite thing to do all year, because these protégés would put together a write-up for their mentors. And sometimes the mentors didn't even know that they were mentors. Like, it was never labeled that way, and it was amazing. I mean, like, people cried. It was great. I love it. So there are a lot of people who genuinely have that intrinsic motivation, and I think it's a good suggestion to a certain degree, pay attention to your gut. If you feel like, gosh, I'm not sure how real or open or authentic I want to be right now, there's probably something to that.
It seems like you're suggesting that if you do find someone, to constantly remind them of their value, of letting them know, like, hey, I appreciate this, and what you're telling me is really helping. And that way, it kind of eliminates a little bit of the cold hard cash equation. Augment that with something beyond cash they're helping you with.
Yes, I think that's an excellent takeaway from that, is to demonstrate appreciation. And I would say try to make it as specific as possible, right? So you could just say, hey, thanks for everything. Like, this is really great. Or you could say, I really appreciated that you took like an extra couple minutes out of your morning on Monday and you sent me that article. Because I could tell that you were thinking about what I'm dealing with right now. And so that was cool. That was helpful. Thank you for doing that. So appreciation and making it specific so that they can tell what they're doing that's helping them. A couple more things there. Am I okay? So just a couple really specific things that I want to encourage you. And this is for when you actually are now in this mentoring relationship. So this concept of active listening is actually very difficult, very draining. And it's because we can process information way faster than somebody can speak it. So when someone's talking to you, it's only about a quarter of your brain power to take that in. And so like right now, a lot of you are doing other things. You might be literally doing other things like checking emails, or maybe doing other things like writing a grocery list in your head, or thinking about, is this going to end, and where am I going to go with food, right? Like, this is how our brains work. We can process 500 words a minute. The average person speaks only 125 words a minute. So this idea of active listening is actually very, very difficult. It takes a lot of energy to quiet down the brain and really listen to what somebody's saying. So when you've really done that, and you've really been an active listener, you will notice that you were very tired. If you're not tired, you probably were not doing as well as you could have with that active listening. So I would say when you're with the mentors, try to really engage. I'd also just throw out a suggestion to consider the environment and what works for you. Is it helpful for you to be nearby and there's this great space here? Is there any benefit for you personally to getting out, or do you like being here? Is having that mentoring conversation nearby useful for you because now you can go and you can sit in that same chair and that'll trigger a thought, right, or something that they said. Consider the 1% rule of receiving feedback. So getting feedback when it's negative or constructive is hard. It just is. It's always hard. We all want to think we're awesome all the time. We know we're not, still not prepared. So what I would encourage you to do is when somebody's giving you feedback that's a little bit hard to hear, they could be totally cool with it, right? I mean, they could be. Or they could be coming from a place of their own insecurities and they're kind of like attacking you or whatever. Just ask yourself, what if that was 1% true? What if it was 99% false, but it was 1% true? Just allow a little bit of openness to what they're saying. If it's something that they are experiencing from you or else maybe will too. So just allow that room for that in the meeting. Maybe it's 1%. Another thing that's a little bit outside the box is to try to teach them something. And so that could be satisfying, and what's in it for me, and it's also a way for you to kind of see how I'll drive myself into this. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. If you want to Google like stuff to do with mentor relationships, there's a number of things. I just try to pull out a couple that don't necessarily all the time. And then this last point is, I think, to answer your question, George, which is plan your meetings and know what you need. So page 2 has a couple last sections there. One is learning, and again, not comprehensive, but a list of questions that you could consider asking a mentor. Could be really, really good learning opportunities for you. So potentially review those before you go into meetings and sessions with them. And then the last piece, for self-awareness there. I'm a big fan of knowing what you need and then requesting that. And if you want to go back to like the dating analogy, this stereotypical gender roles, right, of like the female in the relationship wants to talk about her problems and the male wants to fix it. She's like, I just want you to listen, right? That whole stereotypical argument that can happen. So that can be true in any kind of relationship, including mentoring relationships. So I would say in general, think about what's happening for you and why you have this meeting planned, what you want to get out of it, and this can maybe help guide you in terms of what to ask for. So you could say, all right, so I'm struggling with this challenge, and I think it'd be really helpful if I can just kind of talk it through, and if you ask me some questions about it, I feel like I can kind of process and figure it out. Or it could be something really finite. It's like, look, I don't know anything about the tax laws and pertains to this, so can you share some knowledge with me and teach me how to do this one specific thing that needs to get done? Or it could be a connection. It could be, you know, hey, I know that you mentioned that you have a pretty good relationship with such and such company, and I think they might actually, like, they could really benefit from this thing that we're doing. Would you be willing to do an introduction? So plan ahead, think about what you need, and then just be really upfront about that. And a good mentor is going to be receptive to that. And they won't necessarily try to solve the problem for you if you specifically ask them to take more of a coaching role, asking questions to process through. If you can be so organized as to even identify like a brief list of topics or just one topic and send that to your mentor ahead of time, that's another way to try to manage it. So they're not wasting your time. I'm a big believer that the protégés in the relationship drive it. Or that's the way to make it the most meaningful. And the protégés will drive it. Don't let the mentors just come in and talk about what they want to talk about. Make it about what you need. So that's going to take a little bit of time and reflection. If the mentoring sessions are kind of sneaking up on you and you're like, oh, okay, I got to meet. What am I going to talk about? You're not going to get as much out of it. And most mentors really, really appreciate when the people that they're working with have thought this stuff through and they're focused. Because some mentors can waste your time, and sometimes mentors feel like, I feel like I'm wasting my time. This person doesn't even know what they're looking for. So any other ideas that you have, tips, things that have worked well for you?
Do something outside of whatever, that's always helped. Something that's not this business or, I don't know, like frisbee or golf or something. Whatever.
Sure. Yeah, build that relationship outside the business context. Is there something? No. So I know we're right about at time. Any other questions, comments?
I gave bad advice earlier today.
You did?
I'm hoping you agree with me. Because like two specific starters, and I, again, like going back to like the dating analogy, I want all of our starters to look very attractive and everybody wants to work and date them. But I also think it would be interesting for them to identify or talk to people that necessarily don't want to mentor them and make sure whatever it is, whether it's specifically the product or personality-wise, if there's something that's not a great fit. But also I've talked to via email just now. Some of the mentors, people that want to mentor 5 of the 6. I'm like, no, you can only mentor 2 or 3. Like, you can't mentor 5. So I'm trying to play both teams to protect them. but again, I want them all to. So I think that, and also going back to what you're saying tonight, there's gonna be people that might not be a great mentor fit for you, but they might be a great introduction and help you with maybe that financial person or that legal person would know someone, or specifically that marketing or the public relations side of things. So there might not be an initial, I want you to be my mentor, I want you to be my mentee relationship, but it's someone that's worth following up with because they can really help you with what we're working on in the next 90 days. So, but what would you say as far as like how many, as far as the starters saying no to someone mentoring them, do you have a suggestion for that?
In terms of whether or not to say no or how to say no.
Both. Because I have a feeling they're going to get offers tonight from a handful of people, which they're probably going to get a couple of first and second opinion bites.
So honestly, my recommendation would be to, honestly, I put it on you. I would say, you know what, we're really being encouraged, you know, by the program manager to really have some more focused relationships. This is just a 3-month thing though, so perhaps we can kind of keep in touch and.
Throw Brian under the bus.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Is that okay with you?
Brian decided that you're not gonna work out with me.
Don't ask questions you don't know the answer to, Brian. No, I do think it's probably good to say, you know, because this is a very structured, very fast-paced thing, that we are asking starters to, be pretty selective and really kind of limit some of those meetings and sessions and whatnot. But 3 months is going to go really fast, so always keep the door open, right? For bridges.
So I'm assuming the mentor-mentee relationship is supposed to be mutually beneficial, not necessarily the financial aspect of it. How do you walk that line between planning your meetings, knowing what you need, especially if you're sending an email, I would like to discuss these things, and avoid it seeming like you're just using the other person in a way that it's not.
I recommend trying to do expectation setting right at the very beginning, honestly, and say this is how I plan to try to operate over the next 3 months. Is that going to work for you? And if they're like, I don't know, I'm more like fly by the seat of my pants. First of all, that's something that, okay, so do I want to work with this person? Is that going to work for me? Or is that sort of an inconsistency I can't deal with? But yeah, just get their reaction. I mean, most conflict comes from unspoken or unclear expectations. So I would try to be clear up front about how you want that relationship to look like and kind of setting the agenda. Most mentors, I think, actually really do appreciate that. If anybody has a different perspective, let me know. But when I've talked with mentors, that's their biggest challenge is the protege comes to me and then we sit there and it's like, so what do you want to talk about? No, yeah, like that's
How was your week?
right. Nice weather we're having. Other questions or comments, ideas to share?
I had a question about something you mentioned in your earlier slide, and I know we didn't get into a lot of detail about it, but you said similar demographics. I guess could you just elaborate on what you mean by that? Should I be looking for people that look like me, or I mean, I guess that's what I got. Yeah, that was the hard. There was one point I really didn't understand very well.
Yeah.
If you could explain that.
I mean, it's just an academic research funding. So, I mean, mentoring relationships. I've been studied in my field for a really long time. And when they look at all the different factors that play in, that's been something I've studied quite a bit, is race, gender, age, and not just as variables from the mentor perspective, the protege perspective, but also the extent to which it matches. So research just shows that there's a reasonably strong effect size that mentors and proteges can be more satisfied with the relationship when they have demographic similarity. So in terms of the why, most of that is a little bit speculated on. Sometimes they try to do qualitative data gathering to understand why. But there's something that's very validating about similarity. Right? We know that from social psychology research. We like people who are similar to us. It's very validating. If somebody is like us or they agree with us, that creates a little bit of an instant bond, because if they like it and I like it too, that makes me like, I'm okay, right? So that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Am I advising you to only find mentors who look like you? No. I would just say it's not a non-issue. The other whys can be that there are experiences that people who are demographically similar to you have. I mean, the common thing that comes up for women is this idea of work-life balance, right? So in our society still today, it's a little bit more of a challenge for women to have that work-life balance. It's generally less of a consideration for men. I know that's starting to shift as time goes on, but sometimes women really value having a female mentor because they feel like this person relates to me more. So it's just that similarity, that liking and that trust. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Especially once again, this construct, this setup we're going to be doing. Should there be no walls between a mentor and a mentee? I mean, should it be the kind of thing that you feel like you can, I mean, personally, but kind of thing that you could tell your mentor anything about your business, if there's nothing you hold back, and if there is, then that's not necessarily.
I wouldn't be that black and white about it. I think if there's somebody who's a mentor who they have a knowledge set or they have experiences that you can really learn from, but you don't quite have that level of trust, like it hasn't gotten to that point where you feel like you can just kind of spill your guts and there's going to be no judgment. I'd pay attention to that and just seek from them what you feel is going to be helpful. Maybe there's just that knowledge gain, or it could be like skill building. Some mentor relationships, you're going to have that, like there are no walls, I can tell you anything at one time. So I wouldn't be black and white. It's not like if it's not there, don't put the baby out with the bathwater.
I agree, it should be commensurate with the level of trust.
Yeah, so don't write off a mentor just because you don't feel like you can let all the walls down. Okay.
Well, please join me in thanking Laura. Follow her website, keytownsolutions.com, and she'll be actually speaking to us in just a few weeks as well. She'll be doing another discussion about stress and managing your startup. So. If everybody can do me a favor, if you want to continue talking and networking, feel free to just do it right outside. Feel free to grab a chair. We just have a few people that have